Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are a youth service provider and you work with children with ADHD, or you are a parent who has a child with ADHD, you will want to save this episode, download it. You want to get out a piece of paper and a pen because there's so much great information packed in this episode. As parents and caregivers explore options to support children with ADHD, there has been a growing interest in how nutritional psychiatry and functional approaches can complement traditional treatments. And today we're discussing integrative treatment approaches. Joining us today is Sara Langley. Sara is a dedicated psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner who specializes in children and adolescents with brain-based medical conditions. Sara is double board certified in primary care and psychiatry, and she brings a wealth of knowledge about the integrative treatment of ADHD, blending nutritional psychiatry, functional psychiatry, and FDA-approved medication management. Please join me in welcoming Sara to the podcast.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hello, Sara. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I appreciate your time.
I'm so glad you're here. I just admire the work that you do. You know, before we hit record, I was saying that, I do a lot of assessments where, if I see that kids have ADHD, and it really depends on the severity and if there are co-occurring issues, that I often recommend a consultation for medication or a consultation with a mental health professional who prescribes medication. But so often parents have so many questions about this option and is it right for them? And you've worked extensively with children and adolescents with ADHD, with issues related to ADHD. And I know from the work that I do that ADHD is actually one of the most searched, issues on our website. They're the most downloaded, podcast episodes are related to ADHD in some way. So I'm so glad you're here to address some of the questions that so many parents have when their child gets a diagnosis of ADHD or has a diagnosis of ADHD and has had it for a while, but they really haven't done anything outside of maybe school accommodations, but they're looking for other options. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Now, you specialize in nutritional psychiatry. And I think that's really exciting because a lot of questions that I get asked and I do not have the answers to because I don't have that training, on how does diet impact, mood and behavior? How can it influence symptoms of ADHD? Why don't we start there in terms of some of the things that you talk about with parents when they first come in? They may have a child who's diagnosed with ADHD and they're saying, should I consider medication? Are there other things that I need to consider? Where do you even start the conversation?
Sure. So the easiest place to start with parents is, what are the things we can cut out? What are the food sources that we can cut out that may be exacerbating symptoms? So unfortunately, the Western diet as it is just inflammatory at baseline. It's high in sugar, unhealthy fats, high in processed products, low fiber, high salts. And I believe it was 2011, a paper suggested that a Western diet may actually be associated with ADHD. So for parents coming in, the first thing I say is, okay, we need to avoid synthetic foods, obviously additives, colors, and flavorings. I'm sure most people are aware of red dye 40, which is a synthetic food dye made from petroleum. And honestly, I don't know how we still allow this in food. Research has shown that it is linked to hyperactivity in ADHD. And interestingly, in Europe, where I'm from, we actually have warning labels on packaged foods that contain red dye 40 to say to parents, hey, if your child is predisposed to hyperactivity or anxiety or any of these symptoms, this is a food to avoid. So I feel like that's a very nice thing that we do in Europe. Obviously, it doesn't happen here. It's due to the parents to kind of do their due diligence and stand out reading the labels, which is unfortunate. So yes, I mean, other easy kind of starting points, because it can feel very overwhelming when I'm telling parents to kind of uphold the entire diet, especially if it's just targeted for one family member, is to potentially introduce probiotics. So with probiotics, the gut biome is believed to play a role in the development of symptoms of ADHD, though more research is needed at this time. But gut microbiota influences the brain through inflammation, dysbiosis, through neurotransmitters. The gut makes a lot of neurotransmitters. And also, I think more importantly, it breaks down a lot of the insoluble fibers and provides us with those building blocks that the brain and body needs in order to make those neurotransmitters in the first place. So it's kind of like a nice, very supportive way to support your body's own production of neurotransmitters, for example. And it's quite easy to just introduce, a very basic lactobacillus probiotic into the diet and to just, have that, just have your child take that daily. Other things that parents typically come in asking about are supplements, as you can imagine. So I like omega-3. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps brain cells with communication. It's neuroprotective. And then we talk about supplementation versus diet. So, if you want to eat your omega-3s, fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerels, chia seeds, flax seeds, although I appreciate that for some kids, these aren't particularly appetizing sources or food sources that are going to want to consume daily. So, supplementation with a high quality omega-3 is a lovely idea. Vitamin D is another one. And we are chronically low on vitamin D in California, which is bizarre considering how much sunshine we get. Right. But I guess we're spending too much time indoors, which is unfortunate. When we are outdoors, we are slathering on the SPF, so we're not getting that direct sunlight on the skin. Vitamin D itself supports the dopaminergic system in the brain. So it also supports the production of serotonin, again, two important brain chemicals in ADHD. So again, food sources are going to be fatty fish, salmons, egg yolk, fortified milk. But again, you can supplement provided that you've done adequate blood testing for that. Magnesium is a big one. That's the one I kind of see all the time. I feel that a lot of parents like to have the option of supplementing with magnesium, but there is some confusion as to, what type of magnesium and what dose. So the research has shown us that specifically for magnesium, it's the threonate and the glycinate forms that are able to cross the blood-brain barrier and actually exert their effects in the brain in terms of helping with symptoms such as focus and attention, emotional regulation, hyperactivities, improving sleep. I know a lot of parents, even in the absence of ADHD, they use magnesium for sleep and calming properties. But it's just a matter of buying the right form, like the oxides, the citrates. Those are great for keeping you regular, but not so much for supporting brain health per se. And yes, I mean, there's also B vitamins, zinc, iron, and again, the food sources for those versus supplementation, the pros and cons of each. I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't be supplementing at all. The children would get all the nutrients and the antioxidants that they need from food sources. But it's complicated in ADHD where their nutritional requirements are so much higher than for children, given the cellular dysfunction that's happening at baseline. And also just the way we farm now, the conventional farming practices have reduced the nutritional richness of our food compared to the food that our parents and our grandparents ate, for example. So that's, a constant battle, getting adequate nutrition just using food sources. And then we have the argument of the organic versus inorganic. And I think it was 2015, they did a study that showed that children with pesticides in their blood were twice as likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. So if you have a child with ADHD, the goal is to buy organic as much as possible. Obviously, for a lot of families, it's not feasible just financially or just in terms of access to that type of food. So there are a lot of things to consider. And definitely when they come in, we try to figure out a plan that is realistic and attainable for the specific family and, for their situation, for their belief system, for their financial restrictions, whatever those may be.
Right. And it feels like there's so many factors playing a role. When you talk about a child with ADHD having, higher nutritional needs, and then we look at society in terms of, you talked about how we farm and the way we feed our children and how easy it is to grab packaged food, processed food, and the time that's needed to create healthier options for our children. It can feel overwhelming to parents to think, I have to change everything that I've been doing for the last, couple of years in order to support my child, to support my family. And then having that balance between dietary changes and then also supplements like magnesium and probiotics and, antioxidants. Parents might think, I don't even know where to start, right? I don't even know where to start. Are there places where you tell parents, if this feels like a lot, this feels like a lot of change, here's one place where you can start if parents want an integrative approach, integrate supplements into their treatment plan, or even start with supplements or dietary changes before they consider medication for ADHD, traditional medication?
Right. So I have, I think, 2 or 3, which I might go to more or less after a single visit. The first one, as I mentioned, was omega-3s. I think those are wonderful and those are easy. And they come in capsule form. For children who can't swallow capsules, there's the liquid, and my son takes it. There's no smell, no taste. But again, for the neuroprotective effects of omega-3 and the fact that it is, it's good for depression, it's good for anxiety. Like it has very much umbrella effect and how wonderful it is for just overall health and cardiac health and all these other components. Magnesium, I like to provide that because most parents coming in with children who have ADHD, night times, evening times are a struggle for whatever reason, whether it's rebound from the stimulant medication or whether the child isn't responding well to the non-stimulant medication in the evening that is supposed to be helping them wind down from the evening, or whether they are unmedicated and because of the ADHD and just having a very, very busy brain, they have difficulty getting asleep. So yes, so ADHD does cause sleep issues for the vast majority of children. Again, just due to the fact that the motor is running all the time and they have difficulty shutting off and winding down. I like to add magnesium in the evenings. And again, those two types, the L-threonate and the glycinate forms. And then typically parents will come to me with a suggestion, which helps. They say, oh, I've looked into, whatever it is, whether it's zinc, or I've looked into vitamin D, I'm interested in supplementing with this, or I use this. Can my child use it? My husband used this supplement. Like, is it appropriate for my child? So parents do typically come to me with ideas already, or things that they read up on, or a family friend is using, or a family member is using themselves, which helps us, with regards to the conversation, just having a starting place and making these supplements feel attainable and as though it's something that's doable. But yes, I typically start with just 2 or 3, maybe 1 if it's just too much. And then from there, we see what works, what doesn't work. We give it a couple of months and we can, chop and change, build from there. At that point, parents typically, they're more open to, if they were on the fence about medications, they may at that point be more open to, for example, starting with a non-stimulant or even going to a low-dose stimulant once they've tried the supplementation and perhaps it hasn't provided the coverage that they're expecting. I mean, I'm very clear in that, supplementation and nutrition, it's part of the puzzle. It's not curative. It's not going to, resolve the symptoms of ADHD. It will take the edge off in some cases, and just for a whole round of nutrition, it is a wonderful thing to do regardless of ADHD status or not. But yes, it is, as a parent coming in with a first-time diagnosis of ADHD, it is a nice starting point and a gentle introduction to healthcare and getting medications or at least supplements and other things on board to address symptoms that are bothersome.
Right. And I think it's really important that you talked about that it's not curative, right? That adding these supplements and also parents sometimes feel that, okay, if I do this with supplements and diet, then they will not need the stimulant medication or the non-stimulant medication. Can you speak to that?
Right. So parents are hopeful in that if we address nutrition, if we address diet, this is going to be the silver bullet. I'm very transparent in that it will help. I've heard some parents say it helps 20%, which isn't nothing. It's not zero. It's something, but it's not going to be what completely controls symptoms and allows their child to excel socially or academically. It's an important piece of the puzzle and one that we definitely need to pay more attention to. And certainly removing sugars and removing artificial colors and flavorings will dampen or at least help take those the hyperactivity and the anxiety down a couple of notches. But I wouldn't endorse that this is the thing that's going to fix or resolve. It's adjunctive. It's a wonderful adjunctive to a medication, whether that be a stimulant or a non-stimulant. It's a wonderful adjunctive to therapy. It's a wonderful tool to have on board with everything else, and it's a fine place to start if that's all you're comfortable with. Absolutely start there. But continue to have a conversation with teachers. Continue to have a conversation with the healthcare provider who's looking after your child, and be realistic and be honest about what you're seeing, what you're not seeing, what improvements are not, so that you are able to provide your child with whatever treatment options moving forward will provide them with the highest quality of life and allow them to reach their full social emotional potential moving forward.
Absolutely. And I think that, when you talk about the supplements and even the type, like you talked about magnesium and the type of magnesium, it seems that working with a mental health professional like yourself, who has the knowledge and expertise to guide, rather than just going to CVS or Rite Aid and picking up, a bottle of magnesium or, a bottle of, omega-3s, particularly if they're already giving their child melatonin, they need to have an understanding about how these may interact with each other and, what type, what dose. They need some guidance in terms of what would be appropriate for their child. And it seems that working with someone like you would be so beneficial in that regard.
Thank you. I hope so. I hope that. I mean, I do feel that there is a lot of Googling. There's so many different opinions and so much information that is incredibly overwhelming, and so many dosage ranges and so many varieties, and some links are sponsored, some are not. So is it unbiased? Is it based in best practice evidence or not? So I hope that the information that I provide provides clarity and reassurance to the families coming in, and that they feel that, when they go in there, they're buying the supplement that I suggest that they buy, they feel comfortable, confident that this is the, third party tested, high quality, high purity, versus, as you mentioned, picking something off the shelf at Target.
Yes, absolutely. And, one of the things you mentioned is about the gut-brain connection. And there's so much, emerging research about this, and also specifically to how that can impact ADHD symptoms and other mental health challenges and behaviors. Can you talk a little bit about how kind of gut health impacts brain function? And, parents then will ask, once they understand this, are there things that I can do to improve my child's gut health, which will then impact their brain health?
Of course. So one of the bigger issues with regards to the brain gut health connection and how the gut impacts the brain is through inflammation. So in our guts, ideally we have, a beautiful, diverse forest of different microbes all doing their jobs to keep us safe and healthy, because we are their home. So it's in their best interest to keep us healthy and functioning. And if we have a dysbiosis or an imbalance of bad bacteria into the gut, or we have yeast overgrowth, or a viral overgrowth, or sort of a viral infection, for example, you're going to feel that, right? You're going to have tummy upset. You're going to feel pretty lousy. Everything's going to feel out of whack. So I mean, there aren't any specific studies looking at gut health and ADHD that I've come across, but it seems that with children with ADHD, there is more gut dysbiosis, where there is an imbalance, and the microbe that's causing the biosis in these children is a yeast overgrowth. So they have more of a yeast overgrowth compared to neurotypical neurotypical children. So again, just taking a daily probiotic just helps bulk up the amount of good bacteria so that they can effectively overgrow and crowd out any sort of nasties lingering in our GI tract. And then, so the gut bacteria, the good gut bacteria also form a protective layer, so like a protective wall in our gut. When we have any sort of upset or their numbers are too low, we can get, I think if you've heard of leaky gut, and the leaky gut allows the passage of toxins from the gut into the bloodstream, and then these toxins can travel up to the brain and again cause that inflammation that we were talking about. And then, yes, as I mentioned previously, the gut bacteria are breaking down the complex polysaccharides, the complex fibers that we have to produce those building blocks, and those building blocks are shuttled up to our brain and can cross into the blood-brain barrier, and then those building blocks help produce those neurotransmitters. And this is important for an ADHD because children are typically running low on, for example, norepinephrine. They're running low on dopamine, which gives way to those symptoms. So a very attainable, very low-hanging fruit, and easy thing to do for your child. And again, whether or not you have ADHD, everybody should be supporting their gut health. And I think they're finding, links between gut-brain biome and, Alzheimer's and dementia, overall brain health.
Right. And so it seems like the combination of probiotics and then the diet are really key for parents in terms of things that they have control over, that they can manage, and things that they can start doing now to improve their child's gut health, and then in doing so, improve brain health. Yes.
And I do appreciate that diet can be tricky sometimes, especially in ADHD, where there's that impulsivity and the drive towards dopamine seeking, and in that respect, eating unhealthy foods, like the drive towards having snacks and having processed foods because of that dopamine seeking component there. So it can be a battle for some parents, even if they have the best of intentions. They've gone out and they've bought the entirety of the Mediterranean diet from their local grocery store, and they're presenting it to their kid, and their kid's like, no, I don't like that. I don't like greens. I don't like, fruits. I appreciate how tricky it can be, which potentially is why most parents do opt for the supplementation route. Less of a struggle there with trying to get their children to actually eat food groups they may not be interested in consuming.
Right. And I think you've highlighted the challenges that families face when navigating their child's ADHD and navigating treatment options and their support in those treatment options. Are there specific challenges that you see parents, discussing, talking about when they come into your office that they need support around, where, the kinds of interventions and treatments and approaches are particularly helpful for parents?
Right. So for the most part, most parents who come in to see me are very conservative. Medications scare them, which is fair. Typically, it's a first-time diagnosis. So this is very, very brand new to them, and they're wanting to know, what can we do apart from medication? So we have the nutrition discussion. Obviously, we have the supplement discussion. There is a new system that was released called the ETNS. It's the Monarch, which is a little box, and it provides some stimulation via the trigeminal nerve. So it's something that children use when they sleep, and they have a little sticky pad like on the forehead, face, and it provides those impulses to the trigeminal nerve, and it's meant to have a calming effect on the on the prefrontal cortex. So I always like to offer that up because a lot of PCPs, for example, aren't aware that this product exists or the system exists. So parents have been very receptive and very open to a completely non-medication intervention. Wonderful. This is something minimally invasive. They use it at night, they sleep, in the morning they take it off. And I think the data showed that it should help improve symptoms in about 50%. Again, not curative, just helps with symptoms. So that's a nice adjunctive to have, a nice tool to have access to as well, which I'm pleased to be able to offer to parents. Obviously, we talk about PCIT and parent training if the child is young. And then again, other therapeutic interventions, if that's interesting or accessible to them. Sometimes it isn't because they're at school full time and they have after school extracurricular. So it can be tricky for some families to get on board with regards to combining medication intervention with therapy. But I always let them know that the two together are more potent than either one alone. So if it's accessible, if it's possible to bring in therapy there. And again, as we've been speaking about, just lifestyle is just basic things that we take for granted. No screens before bed, obviously. Having I think a good nighttime routine, exercise, just getting out and moving their bodies. More so than they do at recess potentially. So, bringing them home from school and having them going through a walk through the park. It doesn't need to be anything particularly aerobic, but just having them out walking for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever they can handle, even if it's just running loops around the neighborhood, just something like that.
Yeah. And it seems that, the integrative approach that you've described, and you also, provide parents with other options outside of medication. And you're not excluding medication. We know that there are the benefits of medication, but parents often don't know what their options are. And it seems like you do a great job of providing with those options. I love that you mentioned the trigeminal nerve stimulation. I had, a researcher from UCLA talking about that on the podcast. And, a lot of parents reached out and said they didn't even know that this existed, that this was an option for them. And so again, providing them with information, but then also this integrative approach that you describe with, with diet and with supplements and with medication management. It seems that approach can make a significant difference for young people, and not just those with ADHD, perhaps those with anxiety and other mental health conditions as well. Has that been your experience? It's that it helps not just ADHD, but other issues that children and young people might be experiencing.
Absolutely. I mean, the common denominator in all this is going to be the Mediterranean diet, given how anti-inflammatory it is. So inflammation is thought to play a role in anxiety disorders and as well as depression. We have high amounts of inflammatory chemicals like CRP and cytokines that are seen in generalized anxiety, as well as panic disorders, phobias, PTSD. And it's thought that these inflammatory chemicals impact the brain and, contribute to and cause the anxiety symptoms. So it makes sense to integrate as much as you can in anti-inflammatory foods. So these are going to be, plants, mainly plant-based. So again, the Mediterranean is predominantly plant-based in this respect. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. Plants contain something called flavonoids, which give fruits and vegetables their beautiful, vibrant colors. And these flavonoids give our bodies health benefits, such as protecting against cancer, really being supportive of cognition, lowering the risk of stroke, heart disease, and also reducing inflammation throughout the entire body. My favorite is actually apples. These have a chemical called quercetin. And a small handful of studies have shown that this flavonoid can help alleviate anxiety. So as a result, I give my son an apple every single day because it doesn't hurt. And, you can incorporate things like chamomile. You can incorporate things like decaffeinated green tea, which contains L-theanine. And then we have berries, leafy greens, beets, avocados, anything very bright and colorful. And then spices. So looking at turmeric, saffron, black pepper, cinnamon. Again, all of these are anti-inflammatory and they contain chemicals called phenols. And so this diet as a whole, it's protective for ADHD, it's protective for anxiety, for depression, cancer, stroke. It's very comprehensive, and especially for ADHD, which is so highly comorbid with anxiety, depression, PTSD, ASD. It's wonderful to have access to a diet, or at least to incorporate a diet that kills many birds with one stone and provides full coverage and helps alleviate symptoms in a wide range of conditions and not just one, as opposed to medications which are very, very specific to a specific condition, a specific diagnosis, whereas food helps with everything.
Right. I'm taking notes as you're talking. I'm like, okay, the grocery list, apples, avocados, beets. I know my kids don't like beets, but they definitely love apples. And I actually just put that in their lunch today. So I think this is just such great information. I mean, you're sharing, your insights, you're sharing expertise, you're sharing science-backed information, and it provides such valuable information about the benefits of an integrative treatment plan for ADHD, for anxiety, for other mental health and behavioral concerns. And I'm sure our listeners have not only gained a lot of valuable information by listening to you today, but I'm sure they're interested in learning more from you about your approach, connecting with you to help their family and to help their child. What is the best way for them to connect with you and, all the amazing resources you share with families?
Thank you. So the best way to reach out to me is going to be via email at Sara, Sara @childkindpsychiatry.com. Interested families can also call me and leave me voice messages or text at 818-650-4814. I have a blog site that I run, and every week or so I release different articles on topics related to children's mental health. This week I released a post on magnesium dosing for ADHD, which hopefully parents will find helpful. And if they want to sign up to the newsletter as well, and then they'll receive alerts when new blog posts are being released. I also have a pre-recorded presentation that I've been giving families in my own clinic regarding the integrative treatment of both ADHD and the integrative treatment of childhood anxiety. So I can provide you with the links via YouTube for either of those videos. And again, they're 30 minutes, just providing an overview and more or less summarizing everything that we discussed today.
Wonderful. And I will be sure to put links to all of those resources in the show notes. I cannot thank you enough for being here. I've learned a great deal, and I'm excited about collaborating with you, working with so many of the families that come to me and are looking for support for treatment for their child's ADHD and their own ADHD. So I'm so glad that we connected and excited to work with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
And I appreciate yours. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you learned a great deal. I know that I did. I was taking notes the whole time and will have to go back and re-listen to this episode myself. I hope you found it beneficial. And if you did, please be sure to share it with someone else. Thank you again for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes. There you will find more information about Sara and how to continue to connect with us. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.